Hello, I'm Carlos Cobiella from the Shoulder Practice and University College Hospital in London, and I'm going to take you through today the REGENETEN technique for augmentation of full-thickness tear repairs of the rotator cuff. I'd like to point out that this is a cadaveric demonstration using a double row technique. We will start as usual by doing a bursectomy with a coblation device and an acromioplasty with a burr. It is quite important to get a good clearance of the bursa in the area where the implant is to be applied, particularly over the lateral gutter, as the implant tends to reach the lateral edge of the greater tuberosity. We will then prepare the footprint, taking particular care not to decorticate the lateral edge, which is where the bone staples will be inserted. I am using a double row technique with Smith+Nephew implants, and the medial row I will perform with an HEALICOIL KNOTLESS anchor, which is a peak anchor, and using ULTRATAPE, which is non-absorbable tape. The anchor has an internal locking mechanism that prevents suture slippage. Once the two anchors are in place, I will pass the 4 strands separately with a first pass suture passer. This allows me to distribute the tension throughout the length of the repair. Once the strands are in place, I will grab them in pairs in a W configuration to bring them onto the greater tuberosity on the lateral edge. I will be using the same anchor, the HEALICOIL. This is a vented anchor, and the advantage is that it will promote release of bone marrow growth factors into the repair area. As we can see, there's a nice channel for those growth factors to move through. An alternative to punching is using a self-punching anchor, which might be advantageous in certain situations where maybe the visibility is not as good to put the anchor in. The repair is now complete, and we can move on to the implant preparation. The first step is to insert the tendon markers on the posterior edge of the biceps as reference and to prevent accidental damage. The guide wire is then inserted 0.5 centimeter lateral to the repair, as some overhang is desirable, and as parallel as possible to the tendon to allow positioning in the correct angle. The delivery handle is pushed as far in as you can, and this will be marked by the red button at the back of the handle popping up. You squeeze the trigger and this will deliver the implant. You allow the implant to sit in the fluid for 30 seconds to allow rehydration, as this will facilitate delivery. This delivery is done by pressing on the trigger once you've released the safety on the handle. You push firmly, and this will allow deployment of the implant over the tendon. Now's the time to place the superior cannula, making sure that you have access to the whole of the periphery of the implant. We start securing it on the medial border using the tendon anchor inserter. The 2 prongs are passed through the implant as close to the colored border as you can and inserted firmly onto the tendon to stabilize the purchase. Once the medial edge is firmly held, we can move on to anterior and posterior edges, making sure we don't get too close to bone, as this can damage the tendon anchor inserter. The next step is to remove the delivery handle, and in order to assist, we use the tendon anchor inserter to hold the implant firmly to avoid displacement. We now move on to the bone anchors, and going through the inferior lateral portal, we use the gun to position the prongs are pushed through the lateral edge of the tendon firmly onto the bone of the greater tuberosity. It's important not to tension too much, as we only need to secure it in place. It's tapped down with a mallet to create channels for the anchors, and then the implant is introduced, making sure the handle is not moved until the peak anchor is in position. This is then repeated over the lateral edge until the implant is firmly in position. We then repeat the process through the length of the lateral border using 2 or 3 peak bone anchors until the lateral edge of the implant is secured to the greater tuberosity. It's important to check the position of the implant and check the firmness of the repair at this stage. And this concludes an example of mechanical fixation of a rotator cuff tear using the vented anchor design to facilitate biological healing and augmented with a bioinductive implant such as REGENETEN.